Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey that really cuts right to the heart of how nations are formed, not just by political will or drawing borders on a map or all the usual diplomatic stuff, but by something far more profound, something deeper. Some stories don't just make a nation; they kind of explain it, right? They give you this glimpse into its very soul, the sort of hidden currents that guided its birth. What we're going to unpack today, it feels a bit like discovering a powerful, long-held secret. A spiritual narrative that for many reveals a truly foundational dimension to Pakistan's very inception. We're diving into this really extraordinary account centered around an experience of its founder, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Now, this isn't just another historical footnote or some dry academic discussion, not at all. This is a narrative, an account that was kept in strict confidence, really known only to a trusted few for decades, before finally entering the public record. And it's a story that has, understandably, stirred deep reverence and conviction in millions.
And equally, it's prompted, a degree of thoughtful skepticism in others, which is also fair. But for us, for you, our listeners, our mission today isn't really to adjudicate its ultimate truth like in a court of law. It's more to explore its profound significance, its meaning, and the diverse ways it resonates within the national consciousness.
Exactly. Our mission here in this deep dive is to, well, carefully and meticulously narrate this story, just as it has been transmitted through its distinct chain of testimony. We want to identify who these key figures were, what their roles were, and really explore that complex, often fascinating interplay between deep faith and historical inquiry when you're faced with narratives like this. We are definitely not here to pass judgment on the authenticity of a spiritual experience. Nobody can do that, really. It's more about illuminating the different perspectives, right? The various lenses through which such a powerful account can be viewed and understood. It's really about appreciation, I think, not appropriation, of what is clearly a deeply meaningful narrative for many. And, right off the bat, before we really get into the weeds, there's a crucial contextual detail. It really needs clarification because it profoundly shapes how we understand this whole experience. In the tradition that transmits this account, Jinnah wasn't, some young, fiery revolutionary or a youthful idealist when this dream is said to have occurred. Quite the contrary. He was an elder statesman, well into his 70s.
70s, wow.
Yeah, a man whose life was already, etched with decades of rigorous political, legal battles, immense responsibility, and profound personal sacrifice, too. So this isn't some, youthful visionary's unburdened revelation. This is an elder, seasoned leader with this formidable intellect and an incredibly exacting approach to life, facing what's described as a profoundly spiritual, deeply personal moment. That detail, the weight of his years, his experience, it's vital for grasping the full gravitas, the unique context of this entire narrative.
Cool. That's a really critical point to establish up front. Yeah, it immediately reframes the whole thing, doesn't it? Okay, so let's unpack this then. Let's set the scene. Picture London. Maybe in the interwar years leading up to that tumultuous period, late 1930s. For Muhammad Ali Jinnah, this wasn't just any city. It was the intellectual forge, right? Where his formidable legal mind was meticulously honed, refined. Imagine him, in those hallowed halls of Lincoln's Inn, absorbing the intricacies of common law, mastering the art of forensic argument, developing that famously exacting, almost surgical precision that would define his whole career, really. He was known for his elegant suits, impeccable manners, his precise command of English, and this unwavering adherence to protocol. Very proper.
Yeah.
Yet, beneath that stoic, almost impenetrable exterior, the accounts describe his body certainly aging, carrying the weight of decades of intense political struggle in India, back in England. But his mind, still razor-sharp, analytical, incredibly disciplined, and profoundly private. And the world outside his London residence, even during that period, some called his self-exile, or maybe semi-retirement from immediate Indian politics. It was a veritable maelstrom, wasn't it? Global negotiations heating up.
Absolutely chaotic time.
Yeah, the British Empire winding down, those ominous shadows of an impending world war looming.
Oh.
And on the subcontinent, the increasingly volatile, urgent demands for self-determination. And he, as always, even in this sort of semi-retreat, was shouldering this immense, almost unthinkable burden. The burden of a nation yet to be fully conceptualized or even born. Navigating this complex web of identities, aspirations, with his characteristic, almost stoic calm. He was just a figure of immense gravitas, constantly contemplating the fate of millions, yet holding his own counsel, with remarkable self-possession.
Precisely. And it's against this very backdrop in the quiet solitude of his London residence that this extraordinary event is said to have occurred. One particular night, so the account as it's been transmitted goes, his room is suddenly, inexplicably filled with this fragrance, described as utterly not of this world. It wasn't just, a pleasant scent. It was something ethereal, transcendent, a sensory experience that seemed to emanate from a dimension beyond the mundane. And following this, a profound serenity, a deep, unshakable sense of peace settles over everything, enveloping the room and presumably Jinnah himself. And then a revered presence appears. This is where the narrative truly enters the realm of the mystical, the divine, a moment of profound spiritual encounter. The source material, which is absolutely critical here, describes this presence identifying itself directly, unequivocally. The words, as transmitted, and we'll paraphrase respectfully for this audio format, of course, were essentially, "I am Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. Return to India. Lead the Muslims to their destiny."
Wow.
Yeah. So this wasn't a subtle whisper or some vague intuition. It's presented as a clear, unmistakable, and profoundly personal divine mandate, delivered by none other than the Prophet Muhammad himself. Now, this direct divine communication, if you accept it, would obviously reshape everything for a man of deep faith.
That's an astonishing detail.
Yeah.
Really powerful. To hear that it wasn't just a revered presence, but the Prophet Muhammad himself, giving this direct instruction, return to India, lead the Muslims to their destiny. That completely elevates the narrative, doesn't it? It transforms it from maybe a personal mystical experience into, a national spiritual mandate. But then what's truly fascinating here, for me anyway, is Jinnah's reaction. His response to such a profound, almost overwhelming experience. Here's a man who dedicated his entire life to law, to order, to procedure, whose public persona was meticulously built on rational thought, constitutionalism, careful legal arguments. And for him, this wasn't just some vague, inspiring thought or a fleeting moment. It was, as you said earlier, a direct charge, a sacred directive. And true to his notoriously private, disciplined character, what follows is not what you might expect.
Not at all.
No public proclamation, no dramatic political theater, no grand announcement to rally the masses, nothing like that. Instead, he chooses absolute, almost ironclad secrecy, immense gravity, profound self-restraint.
And that choice, for me, it speaks volumes about the man, about his understanding of leadership. He wasn't looking to, weaponize a spiritual experience for immediate political gain or personal status. He understood the sanctity of it, the profound nature of such a claim, and perhaps the potential for misunderstanding or even cynical distortion if it were immediately made public. This profound trust, this mandate from a source he clearly deeply revered, he held it incredibly close. It became an internal compass, you could say, not an external banner waving in the wind. And he shared it, reportedly, with only one person.
Just one.
Just one. Which is a testament to his discernment and the gravity of the secret itself. And this person was Allama Shabbir Ahmad Usmani, a towering scholar of Islam, a widely respected figure in his own right. His intellectual and spiritual authority was immense at the time. And interestingly, Allama Usmani would later play a vital, very public role in Pakistan's creation. He even led the first prayers of independence, which further underscores his stature and the profound trust Jinnah placed in him.
And the nature of that trust is just striking, almost astonishing in its depth. Jinnah, ever the guardian of propriety, of discretion, and it seems, of a certain sacred silence. He extracts a very explicit promise from Allama Usmani.
Very specific.
Not in my lifetime, he instructs him emphatically. This must remain confidential while I live. Just think about that for a moment. Pause on that. Here's a statesman in his 70s, burdened by the future of millions, facing unimaginable political challenges, sharing a dream he believes to be a divine mandate, and then binding his sole confidant to absolute unquestioning silence until after his own death.
It's an incredible burden to place on someone.
It really is. A profound act of trust from Jinnah, certainly, and a testament to Jinnah's unique approach to leadership and, how he handled the sacred. It suggests a man who understood the immense power of such a revelation and sought to protect it and its mission from maybe premature or inappropriate exposure.
Indeed. And the journey of the secret, from that quiet London room to its eventual public disclosure, that in itself is a compelling narrative, a testament to the character of those involved. Imagine carrying a secret of this magnitude, not for days or months, but for years. Decades, actually.
Decades.
Allama Usmani did just that. He didn't turn it into some sensational sermon from the pulpit, nor did he use it as a political device to rally support or, silence opposition. He simply kept it, guarding it with the utmost integrity. And this demonstrates, I think, a crucial insight into his character, and I believe into the very nature of profound, responsible leadership, which is the greater the claim, the deeper, the more profound, the more disciplined the restraint must be. If there was even the slightest chance that making this public prematurely could have, say, confused the mission of Pakistan or distorted the already complex, fraught political struggle for an independent homeland, then waiting was clearly the wiser, perhaps even the holier choice.
That makes sense.
It prevented the narrative from being misunderstood, maybe weaponized by detractors, or even misused by overzealous supporters in a way that might have undermined the secular constitutional objectives Jinnah was tirelessly pursuing in public. So this story remained precisely what it seems it was intended to be during Jinnah's lifetime: a private conviction, an internal fire maybe warming his own resolve and that of his closest confidant, rather than a public torch lit to inflame crowds, which could have led to unforeseen consequences or misinterpretations. It was a truth held very close, awaiting its appropriate moment.
And so that extraordinary silence it truly held. Decades passed, marked by monumental historical shifts, obviously. A new country, Pakistan, meticulously carved out of British India, amidst unprecedented challenges, sacrifices, violence.
Terrible violence.
Terrible violence. Jinnah, the Quaid-e-Azam, the great leader, departed this world not long after its creation, leaving this young nation to stumble, to stand, to struggle through its formative years, bravely continuing its journey. But through all those seismic shifts, the political upheavals, the national growing pains, that profound dream, that deeply personal revelation remained encased in silence, firm and unbroken, a testament to the immense trust and restraint of Allama Usmani.
And this wasn't an empty silence, It wasn't just an absence of noise. This was a silence that was full of the weight of a solemn promise between a towering statesman and a revered scholar. It was a silence imbued with this profound sense of responsibility, with the understanding that some truths, especially those with such profound spiritual implications for a nation, they need time to mature, to find their appropriate moment for disclosure. It speaks to a deep sense of custodianship, doesn't it? Not just of a secret in the mundane sense, but of the potential implications of its revelation. For a nascent nation grappling with its identity, its future, the wisdom of that long silence, in a way, it almost validates the integrity of the secret itself.
Okay, so here's where the secret finally begins its journey into the public sphere. Nearly 6 decades after Jinnah's passing. It's a long time.
A very long time.
Eventually, this sacred trust, this amana, reaches a man named Chaudhry Fazl-e-Haq. Now, he was a highly distinguished, retired Interior Secretary of Pakistan, a senior civil servant who had dedicated a lifetime to the meticulous, often thankless work of government service. And by the time he steps forward to share this account, he's an elderly man, far removed from the ambitions of public office, Crucially, he isn't chasing headlines or seeking promotions or trying to gain any political advantage. He carries what he profoundly understands to be an amana, a sacred trust, a moral duty to convey something of immense importance that had been passed down to him.
That's exactly right. Chaudhry Fazl-e-Haq testifies that Allama Usmani himself, his spiritual mentor and confidant, directly told him this account of Jinnah's dream. And then, in 2011, his testimony is finally published through various media outlets in Pakistan, marking its definitive entry into the public record.
Do you know that, Kay?
Yeah. So the story steps over that critical threshold, doesn't it? Moving from private remembrance, from that quiet circle of profound trust into the national conversation. And this, for you, the listener, it raises a really critical question, one that speaks to the very heart of the account's credibility. Why would an elderly, devout civil servant, a man whose entire distinguished career was built on integrity, discretion, public service, why would he risk public disrepute or the grave accusation of fabrication by making such an incredibly serious claim?
Right.
A claim that directly connects to the Prophet Muhammad and the very destiny of a nation. He had absolutely nothing visible and nothing temporal to gain from this. Zero. And in a spiritual sense, by fabricating such a weighty claim about the Prophet Pew, he would have everything his eternal standing to lose in the hereafter. The implications of that spiritual calculus are profound. They cannot be easily dismissed.
And then, the story found an even broader national audience, didn't it? Through the work of Dr. Safdar Mahmood, who was, as you mentioned, a distinguished historian, a senior civil servant himself, and a highly respected public intellectual in Pakistan, a recipient of the Pride of Performance Award.
Very credible figure.
Yeah, Dr. Mahmood took this account And through his widely read column in a major national newspaper, he gave it widespread national reach, meticulously contextualizing it within Pakistan's broader ideological spiritual foundation. His involvement was really pivotal, it seems, in cementing its place within the national discourse.
Absolutely. And what's crucial to understand about Dr. Safdar Mahmood is that he wasn't some, excitable novice eager for sensation or controversy. He is widely described as an elder scholar, cautious, methodical, deeply attuned to historical accuracy and public perception. So if he made the decision to publish this narrative, he understood completely what it meant in the public square, how it would be received by historians, by the public, by religious scholars, but he also understood what it meant in the moral square. The ethical implications of putting such a profoundly spiritual narrative involving the founder of the nation and the prophet fee before the nation. So in this way, the story that began as this deeply personal experience for an elder Jinnah, shared with a trusted silent scholar kept in confidence for decades, was finally and seemingly responsibly given to the nation through a credible, respected, and thoroughly vetted channel. It completed its journey from a private, sacred trust to a publicly acknowledged tradition.
Okay, so we have this powerful narrative, meticulously recounted, it seems, with this clear chain of transmission over many decades. But now, as listeners, as thinkers, how do we evaluate such a story? It presents a unique challenge, doesn't it? Because for believers, you might say, truth operates in more than one courtroom.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, there's the familiar, tangible courtroom of documents, right? Verifiable evidence, letters, diaries, archives, photos. But then there's another, perhaps equally significant courtroom, the courtroom of character. Who said it? What did they live for? What principles did they uphold? What did they fear? What did they love? And critically, what did they stand to gain or lose by telling this story?
This is precisely where the concept of riwaya, or transmitted testimony, becomes incredibly important, foundational, really, in Islamic thought. The authenticity, the reliability of a narrative, it's evaluated not just by its content, but fundamentally by the integrity, the piety, the trustworthiness of its narrators, known as riyal. And in the Islamic tradition, there is an incredibly severe warning, one that's known to every student of faith, really, against fabricating words about the messenger he.
Okay.
This isn't just a metaphor, some gentle caution. It's a profound spiritual warning, rooted in specific prophetic sayings in the Hadith literature, that whoever intentionally attributes a lie to the prophet has, well, reserved their seat in hellfire.
No, that's strong.
It is extremely strong. This makes any such claim, especially one of this magnitude, this directness, an act of immense spiritual courage, perhaps, or conversely, unimaginable spiritual recklessness for those who understand its implications. This profound spiritual deterrent is paramount here. It weighs heavily on the conscience of any true believer. So if we consider the chain of testimony for this dream account as it's been presented to us, we see this very deliberate sequence of individuals, each with a widely acknowledged reputation for integrity, piety, gravitas. First, there's Jinnah himself, described as a man of formidable discipline, immense self-restraint, known for his rigorous adherence to truth and procedure in his public and legal life, not someone prone to flights of fancy.
Right, very meticulous.
Then Allama Usmani, a scholar of immense repute who guarded this profound trust with a silence that demonstrably lasted for years beyond the political fray. Following him is Chaudhry Fazl Haq, an elderly, devout civil servant who, as we discussed, had nothing temporal to gain, and indeed everything spiritual to lose by fabricating such a claim. And finally, Dr. Safdar Mahmood, a respected historian, public intellectual at the height of his credibility, who meticulously brought it to the national stage. So from a faith perspective, the logic here is compelling. It's argued that if this account were a lie, it would be a lie that would cost forever, incurring immense spiritual damnation for all involved in its transmission. But if it is a sacred trust, then it is a trust discharged late, perhaps, but properly, through a series of individuals who understood and respected the immense spiritual implications involved. Therefore, from this faith perspective, this chain is seen as morally plausible, deeply compelling, and devotional. And from an ethical perspective within this framework, it's a powerful claim, borne by men who, without question, knew the profound weight of the hereafter and the solemnity of such a narrative.
That's a truly powerful argument from the perspective of faith, focusing on the character of the narrators. It really asks us to consider a different standard of truth, one rooted in spiritual integrity. But now let's shift, as you put it, to the other courtroom, the historian's bench. Because a secular historian operating under different methodologies is going to approach this account with a different set of tools, and frankly, ask some very hard, very direct questions about its historical verifiability. This is where the tension often arises, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between these two ways of knowing.
Absolutely. And the primary concern for a historian is almost invariably going to be, where are the primary sources? Right, the paper trail.
Exactly. A rigorous historian will immediately look for contemporaneous evidence that directly substantiates the claim. Were there letters written by Jinnah himself detailing this experience? Do Allama Usmani's personal diaries or private correspondence contain any entries about it made at the time or shortly after? Are there any notes, memos, official records made contemporaneously that corroborate the dream and its contents? The answer, as far as the publicly known and accessible archives are concerned, is a clear no. None that have been discovered or brought to light so far. The historian would then meticulously point out that the account is, by their standard, secondhand testimony. It moves from Jinnah to Usmani, then to Fawziak, who then brought it to the public via Dr. Mahmoud. And critically, it only becomes public over 6 decades after the event itself is said to have happened. So, from a purely legal and academic standpoint in historical inquiry, this falls squarely into the category of hearsay.
Right, hearsay, yeah. And while hearsay can sometimes offer valuable contextual insights or maybe clues for further research, it's generally not considered documentary proof sufficient to establish a historical fact, not in the absence of direct contemporaneous evidence that historians typically rely upon. It basically means it cannot be independently verified through direct testimony or documents from the time of the event, and the historian might raise one final, equally pertinent point. The very confidentiality clause itself, Jinnah's explicit instruction, not in my lifetime, inherently makes the claim unfalsifiable by historical method.
Ah, okay. Explain that a bit.
Well, to give an analogy, it's like two people having a secret conversation, and only one of them reveals it after the other has passed away. You can't call the second person to the stand, so to speak, to confirm or deny the details.
I see.
What this means is, because it was sworn to secrecy and only revealed after Jinnah's death, there's no way to definitively prove that it happened using the empirical tools of historical methodology. Nor, crucially, is there a way to definitively disprove it through those same methods. It exists, therefore, kind of outside the realm of empirical historical verification. And this is precisely where intellectual integrity truly matters, on both sides. An honest historian confronted with such an account does not say it is false. That would be an overreach, an assertion beyond the scope of their methodology given the nature of the claim. Instead, an honest historian would accurately state it is undocumented, or it lacks contemporaneous corroboration. They simply cannot find the primary evidence that fits their methodological requirements. Conversely, an honest believer, when faced with the lack of such documents, doesn't say it is proven by paper. Instead, a believer might say it is affirmed by the reliability and the unimpeachable character of its narrators, men whose piety, integrity, and spiritual understanding they trust implicitly. So what we have here are two distinct standards of truth, you could say. Two legitimate ways of assessing evidence, often leading to different conclusions about the factuality of an event like this. The tension between these two perspectives is very real, and perhaps in a healthy, intellectually vibrant society, even necessary, even healthy.
That's a fascinating and incredibly insightful way to frame it. Two courtrooms, two standards of truth, both legitimate within their respective domains. It really highlights the profound challenge inherent in narratives that bridge the spiritual and the historical. So this brings us to a really compelling question, maybe the central question for a nation. What happens when a nation's very soul, its foundational narrative, its sense of identity, is nourished by a story that history, with all its rigorous methods and demands for empirical proof, cannot definitively stamp as verified? How does a society, a people, a government, incorporate such a powerful yet historically challenging account into its collective memory and national consciousness?
Well, I believe wise nations, when faced with such narratives, learn to carry the story honorably, with profound respect and, crucially, discernment. This means, first and foremost, refusing to weaponize it for political show, not using it as some cynical tool to criticize political opponents or to establish a hierarchy of belief where some are more Pakistani than others based on accepting the dream.
Right, avoid that trap.
Absolutely. It also means refusing to belittle it with dismissive cynicism, to reject it out of hand simply because it doesn't fit neatly into conventional historical frameworks, which often struggle with the deeply spiritual or mystical anyway. Instead, you place it carefully and respectfully on the shelf marked revered tradition. You allow it to inspire conduct, maybe influence the ethical compass of the nation, nourish the collective spirit. Even if it cannot directly govern academic citations or legal declarations, it becomes a source of moral and spiritual capital, acknowledged for its profound impact regardless of strict historical proof. And here's the truly bigger point, I think. The bridge that connects these two perspectives, the verifiable with the spiritual. Regardless of whether you accept the dream as a literal, verifiable fact, or if you regard it as a foundational memory. A powerful, encapsulating legend that expresses deeper symbolic truths. It articulates something that history can and does unequivocally verify.
Okay, what's that?
History demonstrably shows us that Pakistan's creation defied immense odds. It emerged against the tide of many powerful factors. That's verifiable. It verifies that a disciplined, lawyerly mind like Jinnah's indeed carried a people, the Muslims of India, through unimaginable chaos. Through political deadlock, immense communal tension, with an extraordinary sense of order, unwavering purpose, and legal acumen. Also verifiable. And for countless Muslims across generations and diverse backgrounds, this entire struggle for an independent homeland, it felt less like mere political maneuvering or a demographic inevitability, and much more like a profound act of providence, a divine intervention in human affairs. So the symbolic truth, the emotional truth, the spiritual resonance of the dream, it aligns powerfully with these undeniable historical realities. It gives voice to a deeper, widely felt sense of destiny.
That's a powerful and crucial connection you've drawn there. Linking the narrative of the dream to the undeniable historical facts and that deeply felt sense of providence for many. So whether one leans more towards the faith perspective, recognizing the spiritual integrity of the narrators, or prioritizes the historian's bench, demanding empirical evidence. What enduring wisdom, what practical lessons can we truly draw from this entire narrative? What insights can we take away from this profound story for both leaders and citizens in contemporary life, regardless of how we personally interpret the dream itself?
There are indeed several critical, enduring takeaways, I think, applicable to anyone who holds a stake in Pakistan's future, or, frankly, in the future of any nation striving for purpose. First, there's that profound concept of amana, the trust of Pakistan. Now, if the dream is accepted as literally true, then Pakistan isn't just a state formed by politics or human ambition. It is, quite literally, a trust from God, a divine responsibility bestowed upon its people and its leaders. But even if one is agnostic about the dream itself, that underlying principle holds immense transformative power. A nation truly survives and thrives, reaches its highest potential when its people, its leaders, its institutions consistently treat it like a precious trust, with unwavering justice, careful restraint in governance, selfless service to its citizens, and diligent protection of its resources and values. It instills this sense of profound, almost sacred responsibility that transcends mere administrative governance. It elevates it to a moral imperative. When a leader views their role as an amana, it fundamentally shifts their decision-making, from personal gain to public good, from short-term expediency to long-term sustainability. It means every policy, every law, every administrative act is weighed not just for immediate impact, but for adherence to justice, benefit to the collective trust. Second, the narrative powerfully illustrates that leadership is responsibility, not spectacle.
Yeah, that really came through.
Jinnah, as we've meticulously noted, never once used this profound dream to market himself. Never used it to gain popular votes through spiritual claims, or to further his political agenda in a public, dramatic way. He kept it intensely private, shared it with only one trusted soul. And this exemplifies a timeless truth about genuine leadership, I think. Leaders who trumpet sacred claims, who use spiritual experiences for public show, for personal charisma, or political opportunism, they often find that the very sacredness they claim is diminished or even utterly lost. Their motives become suspect.
Right.
Conversely, leaders who guard the sacred, who internalize such profound experiences and let them guide their actions with humility, discretion, unwavering commitment to principles, they are the ones who ultimately gain genuine moral authority, deep respect, and lasting impact. Jinnah's almost austere restraint offers a powerful model for how to embody a spiritual conviction without exploiting it. It teaches that true power comes not from display, but from quiet, consistent service guided by an internal moral compass. Third, we learn that faith complements constitutionalism. It doesn't replace it.
Okay.
Interesting. The existence of a divine dream, even if you accept it as an undisputed fact, doesn't negate or erase the absolute need for robust laws, sound policy, strong and impartial institutions, a functioning constitutional framework. All essential. If anything, it elevates the work. It transforms mere legislation into an act of sacred service. It elevates administration into a profound commitment to honesty and transparency. And it frames governance itself as an act of worship, maybe, an offering of one's best to the divine purpose. This perspective argues that the spiritual mandate is fulfilled through the establishment of justice, upholding law, creating equitable systems, not in opposition to them.
Right.
It means the pursuit of justice isn't merely a legal obligation, but a spiritual one, making corruption not just a crime, but a profound betrayal of a divine trust. It integrates the ethical demands of faith into the structural demands of the state, ensuring the spirit of the law is as important as its letter. And fourth, a crucial call perhaps to carry two eyes.
Carry two eyes.
Yeah, meaning honor faith's profound testimony, recognize the deep truths, the moral guidance, the spiritual inspiration it offers, while simultaneously respecting history's method, its rigorous demand for empirical evidence, meticulous documentation, critical analysis, questioning assumptions. When both of these eyes are open, when a society learns to appreciate both the rich tapestry of spiritual narratives and the often uncomfortable clarity of empirical facts, then nations gain the clearest possible vision for their future.
Yeah, that's a great image.
They can draw immense strength from their heritage and traditions without being uncritical or blindly accepting. And they can engage with the complexities of the present reality without losing their soul, their moral anchor, their sense of higher purpose. This balanced approach fosters, ideally, intellectual humility and spiritual depth, preventing both rigid dogmatism and sterile materialism from dominating the national discourse. It allows for a richer, more comprehensive understanding of self and destiny.
That's incredibly insightful, tying these profound concepts directly to practical applications for leadership, for citizenship today. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, we kind of return to that core understanding that underlies this entire narrative, don't we? For some, it's a deeply cherished folklore, a powerful legend that speaks to the very soul of the nation. For others, it is foundational truth, a divinely ordained mandate. But what we can all agree on, I think, without question or reservation, is that Pakistan was born through extraordinary struggle, a monumental effort, guided by a leader, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, whose discipline, whose dignity, whose unwavering vision truly changed the course of history for millions.
Absolutely. And whether you, listening now, are fully convinced of the dream's literal truth, finding profound solace and conviction in its every detail, or find yourself still pondering its meaning, its historical context, let this perhaps be the lasting, actionable thought that you carry forward. If this country, Pakistan, is indeed an entrusted flame, a sacred charge and amana, then it must be guarded with unwavering justice and boundless mercy by all its citizens and especially by its leaders. Even if you remain unsure about the dream itself, let its meaning, its profound implications for responsibility, for integrity, for purpose, let that guide your actions every single day in every sphere of life. This means, fundamentally, build strong institutions that serve all, not just some. Defend the weak and the vulnerable, ensuring justice reaches everyone. Keep your promises, whether in public office or private life, upholding that sense of trust. And serve. Serve with restraint, with humility, and unwavering dedication to the collective good.
Because that truly is what turns nations. Whether they were born of extraordinary dreams or the most arduous political will, into living, breathing mirrors of their very best ideals. We began this deep dive with that ethereal fragrance and a revered presence in a quiet London night, a moment of profound revelation. And we end perhaps with a reflection, almost a prayer for all of us. May we, all of us who inherit this land, be worthy of the immense trust we've been given, a trust built on sacrifice, guided by vision, and imbued with a profound sense of destiny.